Good afternoon, and thank you for taking the time today to join us in our Veeam webinar on how to ensure business continuity for remote workers. My name is Travis Miller. I am the product marketing analyst here at Veeam with a background from support for several years. My colleague today is Andrew Zalesko. He is a technical analyst with the product strategy team. Hello, Andrew.
Hi, Travis. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. So we're going to move right along here to get things started. To go over this, about this webinar today, you are automatically muted. We will have a time for Q&A at the end, but throughout the presentation, if you do have any questions or anything, feel free to use the chat function in QA section there. And we are recording this, and the presentation will be emailed to you along with the deck and hosted on our Veeam resource library. So let's get started. First on our agenda today, introduction. Then we're going to go over Veeam agents. Then Andrew's going to discuss the Veeam PN. And then we just have a couple slides and we're going to jump into a more in-depth demo to show you how it works in our actual deployment process. And then at the end, like I said, we're going to have a Q&A session. So to kick things off, we have our Veeam agents for Windows and Linux. With the Veeam agents, it is part of the Veeam Availability Suite and Veeam Backup and Replication. It offers a cloud mobility where our Veeam agent is not just used for physical, it can also be used for cloud instances and virtual machines. It was mostly designed for physical, but it is the utility player at Veeam that can do it all. We also integrate with monitoring and analytics of Veeam One, so you can get job reporting and protection reports about your Veeam agent jobs. It does restores to any locations. We can restore back to VMware through an instant VM recovery. We can restore back to the cloud directly to AWS or Azure, as well as other physical hardware of new or the same hardware as before with the bare metal recovery process. What we're going to focus on today is the governance and compliance, because we're going to discuss the centralized management, a little bit on encryption, but the 3-2-1 retention options a little bit as well. Mostly on the centralized management, because that's the key here, what you're going to get the most out of when managing remote workers. Next, we have the agent deployment options. So right here, we're going to go into, this is how we're going to actually install and configure the agents to then apply into a backup job. So the first one is managed mode. That's that centralized management from the Veeam backup and replication console, and it's utilized through a protection group, a container that houses the machines to then deploy the agent to, which we'll go over a little bit more here shortly. The standalone mode is a manually installed agent that you would download from the site and deploy to the actual endpoint or laptop, workstation, what have you, just like any other software. Then you can configure it in place in the GUI. And then we also have a more advanced option. If you are doing larger deployments and you want to do it via configuration file or command line, we can actually export a standalone agent configuration from, let's say, like a golden image type of situation, and then you can deploy it to other ones right out of the gate without having to manually configure it. Can save you quite a little bit of time. Also, this can integrate with sysprep for Windows. So you can have that configuration file, and when you're installing Windows, deploy agents and configure the backup automatically for you. There's one that's not on here, but it is worth a mention, is if you don't have the time and resources maybe, or the ability to deploy this and manage it yourself, we also have a very large group of service providers that offer backup as a service or even DR as a service. And we have a link later on that I can share with you to get more information on it, but a very good opportunity for customers that just need the backup and a Veeam powered solution to get the job done, and then can offload it and kind of hit that easy button per se. So we're going to move along here to the protection groups. With the protection group, back from the managed slide, from the previous slide, you have three main options on adding machines to a protection group container. Individual computers, so I can add it in by the IP address or DNS name. This will come into play a little bit when we're talking about the Veeam PN later on for connectivity if it's remotely, so keep that in mind. Also Active Directory, same thing with any of these, But this one's nice if it's already on the domain and you have a user or group or organizational unit established. As new machines get created or put into those units, we can then automatically add it into the protection group and to deploy the agent for you. Then we have the CSV file as another option too. Next, we have the options of how and when you're going to rescan the actual machines that are part of the protection group to when you want to deploy it. Now, when we first configure it, by default, it will automatically initiate a rescan by default and then push out the agents to those machines. Now, this will then check, do I want to update it automatically, or do I want to install the CBT change block tracking driver, or even perform a reboot? Because sometimes in the initial install or a upgrade, if we do have to interact with the .NET framework within Windows, it may prompt a reboot for that machine. So this gives you the option to either do it automatically or you can do it manually. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is on that first install, if it does require a reboot, you won't be able to run the backups until that reboot's occurred. So, and then finally here for this, we have some advanced options. This is nice, again, for the remote workers, because you can limit the amount of bandwidth that you have, because maybe on a lot of home connections or anything else like that, you might not have a huge upload speed. So you can limit this and say, hey, I can still get some work done while I am uploading my backup to an off-site repository in the background. Now, you don't always have to send it to an off-site repository. There is options for local. The other thing is, and sometimes laptops or workstations aren't powerhouses, so you can have backup I/O control to prevent it overtaking the rest of your system and kind of throttle it in the background while you're doing other work. And then for security, we do have an option to allow non-administrative accounts to do file level recovery. A little bit more on that later. So next, after we've established the protection group and how you're going to do it from the managed, you also have the ability to do different backup job types and modes. So there's kind of two levels here. Managed by backup server is very similar to like our virtual machine backup jobs, if you're familiar with. It is established where the Veeam backup and replication server and its database manages pretty much the whole aspect of that backup. The machine or endpoint that you are backing up does act like a proxy, so there's no other third component involved here. This is great for the failover clusters as well, as that can only be managed by servers. So a DAG configuration, SQL not always on, I apologize, or just a Windows failover cluster. Now, the managed by agent is what's really going to shine in this situation, because what it provides you is a policy-based solution where we're offloading other than the management and deployment of the Veeam service, mostly all to the endpoint itself. So it pushes out a local database, and then that agent can run on its own. Well, it just checks in ever so often with the Veeam server to verify that it's most up-to-date configuration. Something we're going to go over further in our demo here shortly as well. But again, this is great for laptops and workstations. And when you set it up as a managed by agent, it only will use the workstation edition, which is great with VUL because that you can have 3 workstations that will end up combining to consume 1 VUL license. So with that, we're going to move on to the Veeam powered network section, and Andrew is going to go over this, and then we'll move on to the demo. Andrew?
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Travis. So with the agency is just one part of the story of remote workers, trying to work from whenever they are and trying to protect the data they're working with using their own laptops, they're using workstations and stuff like that. But then actually the other part of the story is how to ensure the connectivity between all the sites and how to actually to secure the traffic that is going on, the exchange of the data, because this is probably something that is also important for you and for the company. And so we're not really, as Veeam as a company, we're not really famous because of Veeam powered network. This is the side project, and I will tell you the story about it a little bit later. But then We truly believe that this is the great part of technology that you should be aware of. And so here comes the explanation. Um, you know that in Veeam, inside of the company, we have around 4,000 people or even more these days. And so a lot of departments, a lot of people, and they're trying to get on with their lives. They're relocating, they're moving somewhere, and they're still working on the same projects that they are supposed to. And so one person from Veeam R&D from Czech Republic, he decided to move to Canada, and so he relocated to Canada. And obviously because of that, he wanted to kind of to stay in touch with all the colleagues, with his team, and to just, you know, to ensure that he could access internal resources. But then inside of the company, we have the strict network policies. And another issue he had is he was using the MacBook, and it's not all sort of, it's not really compatible with the VPN that we are using inside of the company. So he wanted to kind of work around it, and he started a side project. And then we decided, once we had a kind of an overview about it, we decided it's actually a good piece of technology, and so we could release it for the community. That's what we did. And so again, VPN, let me actually show you the challenge of the things that we're trying to solve here. So the challenge, like I mentioned before, that your business might be really distributed one. So you have the headquarters office somewhere with physical servers, virtual machines, workstations, and it's all fine while it's kind of inside of the same data center or inside of the same building. But then bring it some more, let's say, the additional equipment, branch office, remote office, cloud environments, which is popular these days for all the DevOps operations out there, and then remote workers, which is also popular these days. So instead of having all those kind of offices and workers and data centers running in silos, it would be nice to actually to have connected them and to ensure the network connectivity between them, which is trustworthy and secure. And this is something that VPN does. Okay, talking about VPN itself, I will show you in a lab in a couple of minutes. I will show you how it looks like, how you configure it, and stuff like that. But then for now, this is the web-based console, which is designed for simplified configuration of virtual private networking. And you can see already some traffic going on here, and you can see a spike on the right side of the console. But then again, we'll see it in live how it works. For now, it's available from both AWS and Azure marketplaces, as well as available from Veeam.com also. So we have the pre-configured appliance, really tiny Linux VM that you can just download as a template from Veeam.com. And again, I will show you later. And you can deploy it as for example, as a side gateway if you need to. Really easy. And like I mentioned before, it's a free tool, so we don't charge for that. Probably one thing that we could ask you about, if you decided to try it, if you like it, or if you don't like, if you feel like something's missing, just go to Veeam community forums and tell us about it, because we are really trying to, to hear from you and to address the feedback that you are giving. Okay, and for network administrators, that will be really helpful in terms of monitoring how it's used and what kind of traffic's going on, and what kind of the site-to-site and point-to-site connections are happening and stuff like that. So again, it's well, while it's ensuring network connectivity, it also provides some kind of overview information about these connections, which is also nice. Okay. So a little bit about technical details about the product itself. The architecture of VPN is based on kind of hub and spoke, which means that there is one central piece of technology. We call it Veeam Hub, and essentially this is the central piece with the public IP address, probably deployed somewhere, AWS and Azure. Those are just popular options. And then everyone from out there, all the side gateways, all the point to side gateways, they can connect to it, to the central hub, and so they're spoke. It's based, like I mentioned before, it's based on Tiny Linux. We use Ubuntu 18.04. And then for the side-to-side connectivities, we integrate with WireGuard. We use WireGuard. We used to have OpenVPN, but then we realized that WireGuard can provide much more performance and more security at the same time. And for point-to-side connections, we still use OpenVPN. It's just because it's compatible with a lot of clients out there. So you, whenever weird system you're running, I'm sure it's not, but in this case, I'm pretty sure that you will find the OpenVPN client, and it would be easy for you to kind of to assume the configuration file and to just go up and running within a couple of seconds. And we use AES 256 for traffic encryption. Obviously, you don't want your data to be exposed to somewhere else, to someone else with the wrong intentions. Okay, with that, let's actually go to the demo, but then I will kind of hand it back to Travis, because we'll start from Veeam agents and we'll continue with VMPN later on.
Thank you, Andrew. So we're going to go ahead and bring up my lab here. And we're going to hop right in, and we're going to start with a standalone agent deployment. So this is what you would see in a console if you did a standalone agent just through a free edition or even paid, because when you first install it, you can apply a license or you don't need to. During the installation, it'll first start off. If you go through it, it will prompt you the first thing after you accept the user agreement and third-party license agreement that do you want to attach a drive or point it to a repository and get the backup job going immediately? After that, then it'll prompt you to do a recovery wizard to create the recovery image for our bare metal restore process. I've already skipped through those, but I'll show you how to kind of go back through this, and we'll go through a quick job configuration. With this one, I've already got it configured, and the main part of this menu is, see, my job's already right here. I can add a new one, and then if I hover over this, I have a nice list of different features or options that I have. I can do a backup now, active full, a standalone full backup, so it's outside of my retention policy set, or I can do a one-off backup to another location. Say I have a temporary USB drive, I just want to write a single backup on and store it just in case. I can complete my file level restore or restore a volume. The bare metal restore with the recovery image does require a boot thing, so it's not actually launched from the console itself. With this, but when I do a job configuration, and right now I do have this set up to go to our Veeam backup and replication server. So when I launch this, it's going to reach out and communicate with that server. It's looking for repositories and now synchronizing a license. Since I have a license installed with Veeam Backup and Replication, it'll automatically apply it to this agent for me. Now, I do have the option in Veeam Backup and Replication, there's a checkbox that I'll show you here shortly, that can say, I want to allow free agents to consume VUL licenses, or I can deny that and say, I just want free agents to write to a repository and that's it, and don't use a VUL license. The one caveat with that is you cannot have paid and free agents running to the same Veeam backup and replication console. So something to keep in mind when you're wanting to do that. But there is no limitation on the number of free that you do attach to it. So with this one, the name on that first section, then our main option is entire backups, volume level, or file level backup. In this case, it's going to do an entire computer. Destination, again, local storage, a shared folder or NAS, or my Veeam backup and replication repository. So next, then it's the Veeam backup and replication server. I've entered in the DNS name here. And usually you will need to specify credentials. So with that one, it's established this. When I do next, it already did the scan, so it doesn't do it at that step because it was when I was initiating this. Now, when I'm looking at this, this is the list of Veeam backup and replication repositories on that Veeam server. Now, if you see this, there's only 2 right now. And I'm going to show you here in a second in VBR, there's a reason why you only see 2 when I actually have 4 repositories on there, because there's permission control. So you can delegate which repositories, standalone agents, or any agent for that matter, can write to or access. So in this case, I have it set to only an exagrid or the local one that I named on that repository. This one, I'm going to go ahead and do the exagrid. That's the great thing about going to a Veeam backup and replication repository. I'm using a deduplicating storage appliance. This can help me for all my different laptops that are mostly, similar in Windows OS base or anything like that, can deduplicate out at a global level, saving me space overall. With this is our standard kind of advanced options then for backups. I can create synthetic full backups or an active full backup. Since I am going to a deduplicating storage appliance, I'm going to leave the synthetic full backup disabled because it works better with this current storage type. I do usually recommend that if you are going to a standard repository because you get a full restore point, but it's only usually taking the space of it is still taking the full space of a VBK, but it does take less time for the actual backup process and transfer of data off-site. So with this, then we have the backup cache. This is the great thing about the standalone agent and that backup policy that I'll discuss a little bit more later on is if I have it going to a VBR repository or even a NAS box or something else, and because I'm traveling with a laptop, if the backup job cannot access the VBR, the Veeam backup and replication server or the repository, then it will default and fail over to writing to this local cache. In this case, I'm just using the C drive, and I can designate how much space I have in this location. Once that backup completes to that, it will then upload in the background to the VBR anytime connectivity is reestablished. And you do have some options where you can, again, monitor the traffic or throttle it or even pause for a certain amount of time because if you need the extra bandwidth. With this is the key thing about back to the server versus workstation. If you enable application aware processing, this is automatically going to turn into what we call the server job type. So it will consume a full VUL instance. Now, for a standard desktop or laptop, you don't really need the application aware processing enabled. It's more for SQL or Exchange, something that you do need that application consistency during the snapshot operations. Enable file system indexing is a great add-on advanced feature if you're using Enterprise Manager and you want to have the one-click restore, because you can pre-search backup files for a file itself, but it's not always required, and it has different use cases. You can still do standard file level recovery with our backup browser without that enabled. So one thing to keep in mind there. With scheduling, just like our virtual machine jobs, this is configured very similar. I can do it daily, monthly, periodically, and I have several different features and ways I can configure that. That said, this is for the basic Windows installation here. There, down in the bottom right, there is a icon that I can launch, and this goes into the view cache. I can pause the sync on the upload, launch the control panel, which we already have. I can run a backup and basic commands from here. Now, if you don't even see this, in our start menu, we also offer the recovery media creation tool that will go through, pull out all your drivers and configure an ISO file that then you can mount on a USB or something to boot into the recovery image to do a bare metal restore. I can also launch a file level restore wizard or configure a backup job. It basically launches the same wizard, but they're standalone launchers for this outside of the console. I can do it either or, kind of build your own adventure with that. So with that, I'm going to move over to the Veeam Backup and Replication console and go over the configuration from that side and how that compares to the standalone agent and why you may use one over the other. So if I go to this main homepage, you can already see that job I configured on the backup on the standalone agent is present here, shows that I ran it already, going to that repository, and I can get job statistics. Now, the one key thing to think about this is when I right click on this, I don't have full access or control because it is managed by that agent and a standalone one. I can see the report or statistics. I can disable it if I need be, but I can't start and stop the job. So that's left up to the end user from that actual console. So one thing to keep in mind. One other thing you see over here, you notice how there's a little green V around the gear. That I can tell immediately looking at this, that is a standalone agent targeting a Veeam backup and replication server. The gear right below it, I know, again, I can see the type, it's an agent backup, but this is the managed by server backup and the server mode design. So it's very similar to the virtual machine backup, as I have down here, virtual backup for a Hyper-V backup. So they're very close, and you can kind of think, and that's where you're going to look at the type to kind of tell the difference. The next one down is the policy, and it stands right out with that nice little kind of policy paper with the Veeam agent right next to it. So that's the one I want to use for this type of deployment, and I will go over a little bit more here now. So this is the backup jobs that we're looking at. So we have to rewind a little bit, and we need to go back and create the protection group as well. So I'm going to go down to inventory, and under physical infrastructure, I have the three main options of creating a protection group, create a backup job or policy, or perform a restore. So with this one, I have one designated out that I submitted a machine to, and I can see that it's installed, it's online, and I have the IP address and the OS that it's running on. And this one I know that I just did a manual install. This next one down, and this is back to that remote servers, I use the Active Directory discovery group on an organizational unit. So if I wanted to add anything more in there, since I have added into the actual configuration here, the type, I did Active Directory. I can just drill down. I've already selected my domain. I can choose any of the ones I want. So this one I have here, remote directory, and then see there's 3 in there. So now what I did for this time, because I just did one level up, these are virtual machines, so I unchecked the box for now, but let's say in an organizational unit, you need to remove or you want to isolate. Instead of having to create one just specifically for this, you can run exclusions. In this case, I excluded one of the ones dedicated for that, so it doesn't add in the actual or deploy the agent via this protection group. Next, we have the ability for credentials. Now, let's say if they're all on the domain, I should be able to use some sort of domain admin account, or if they aren't on the domain or you have different security policies, you can use local administrative accounts on each and every one of your single machines. You would check this, and then you can set the user over here. A nice feature is, instead of waiting for the rescan and going through the actual full process, we have the test now. And what this will do is do a quick test to say, hey, does my account have administrative access on the machine that I'm reaching out to? That's another caveat with the standalone agent is if you're working with an enterprise application or enterprise asset, you might not have local administrative rights on it, so you won't be able to deploy it as a user directly. You might have to have a admin or someone else handle that. Now, this can cover that process for you and kind of a management thing where you don't have to worry about giving them full admin controls. Next, we have the when we rescan and look into it, what I covered on the slides. Again, the change block tracking driver, automatic update, and how often I want to look for the repository. And we also can even choose a distribution server. So if something is offsite and you know you're going to have a lot of workstations out of the other one, instead of pushing that agent across network connection, you could set up a distribution server at one of those locations to manage as new ones come online. Under the advanced features, again, that's what I showed a little bit earlier on the slide. And with this, then review it, just kind of saying, okay, I already have these done. If this is the first time through, it'd say, okay, I need to install these. If I go ahead and apply, this is just updating that configuration. And I'm not quite done yet because I have one step left where now it's saying run the discovery. So I'm going to go ahead and do finish. And this is actually going to complete that discovery process and verify. Now, you'll see this says it's not required because I know the agent was already installed. But if not, it would go through and you would see it deploying it, updating it, and configuring it after the fact, and you're ready to go. So once I have the protection group created, then I can create backup jobs based off of that. So with this one, with the policy, very similar in how that's done. Everything's pretty much the same. This one I just did individual computers. And for options, see, nothing really changed in this. The only thing that's really different about the policy is it is that managed by server. So we are pushing out the local database to the machine. And it's a shared responsibility in the backup process. So if I go over here in this policy, what I'm going to show you is I'm going to jump out to one of those that are on here. And you first look at this, there's no tray icon down here at first. Now you have the option, if you go to the start menu, I have the same options as the standalone agent here, and I can launch that, and then it'll appear down here. I get the same backup console as the other one. So it's a familiar thing where easy to use interface for an end user, but there's some limitations here. Now, we do give them the ability to complete a backup now. So this will create an incremental backup for the job and run it to the repository, which I can run right now. The other backups though, I am not allowed to do it. And if I do prompt one, it'll say, reach out to your administrator to double check and they can run the backup for you. So we don't create more active fulls or standalone fulls, and you can't even go to another location, but you can create that ad hoc backup there. And you can even create a local job if you wanted to as another actual backup job. With the restore, but I still also have the ability to do file level restore and volume level restore directly from this console or the other wizard in the start menu. One other thing I wanted to show here is this one I set up where I disabled the repository. Right now it looks blank, but if you look at this, you can see back a few days ago, I completed a backup. The repository was not available at the time because I didn't have a network connection. And then once it established and I reestablished the network, it just uploaded that restore point in the background for me. So very handy to have. And the nice thing is with our new resume functionality, if this gets paused midway through or something else happens, it will then pick up from the most recent blocks it had to then complete the upload process. Same with our backup offline as well. If we run into an issue, we have a timeout period where if the agent is running to the, let's say the VBR repository, and the agent fails or we lose connectivity, the backup job will then fail over to writing to the cache locally. And then once it's completed, it'll finish uploading the rest of those files to the actual backup repository for you. So you're covered for those on the go and remote situations, because everybody knows home internet sometimes can be a little spotty. So a nice little feature. This is a very quick, small thing, but even with here, I get the same kind of results on this page as I do in VBR. So again, it's a shared responsibility. From over here, I have the same different things for the process and how it's going into that. So I can see that it applied the policy. Every 24 hours, if the agent that resides on the server does not recognize that it has established a connection to the VBR server for a new configuration update, it will then reach back out to the Veeam backup and replication server to re-pull down that policy. Now, if it still can't communicate with it, it'll fail back to its old policy and still complete a job run at that time and based off its old policy. Now, if I go under backups disk here where we store our backups and kind of show them, I still have access to this one. I also have, it's under imported. Oh, I didn't run the job, but I have the laptop. I would be able to see the full backup here. This is another one from Adam's Downloads. It's a standalone local repository to the Veeam server, but it's also a remote laptop that's running a backup to here, and I have the full extent of restore capabilities. So very handy to have centralized management, but still allowing the end user to do some of their own restores and not have to reach out to the service desk or a backup admin to complete some of these tasks. The one thing I did want to finish up is, remember when I said about the number of repositories? So right here, something you want to do when you come in or you create a new repository, if you are using agent backups, is go to access permissions. By default, it always says deny everyone. This applies to physical machines, everything else. Virtual machine backups would still be able to go to this. I would change it to allow everyone. Then I would be able to see that in that drop down from the configuration portion of targeting a backup and replication repository. I can also encrypt the backups at the repository level, or you can enable it at the job level as well. So it kind of either or option there. So, with our different repositories and everything else, that's pretty much all I had today for this about our different deployment options and how you can go into it. So now I'm going to pass this over back to Andrew, where he's going to show you the connectivity issues of if we wanted to push out a policy or the manage by server or something else like that to allow that VPN connection so you don't have to go through an existing process. So there we go.
All right, thank you so much, Travis. So let's jump back to the same lab. We just, well, I'm going to use it for now. I prepared kind of the nice picture for you so you can understand what I'm trying to do here. Well, what I will attempt to do in a couple of minutes. So essentially, my plan is to deploy a Veeam PM central hub in AWS. I could do it in Azure, but it's just, I don't know, I prefer AWS. And I'm going to connect it to my remote office, which is in Columbus, Ohio. And I'm going to connect it to my home lab and to Azure environment, which I'm going to use for development purposes. So anyways, this is the plan. And the first part of the plan is to actually to go to AWS Marketplace and to search for Veeam. So it's really easy. You can do the quick search and you can see, oh, there we go. We have the Veeam PM 2.1 option right here. So now I can go and I can continue to subscribe to this service. Okay, I can continue the configuration and I can use the proper region. Okay, let it be Ohio, and I can continue to launch. We're using CloudFormation plan, so I'm just going to launch it to show how it looks like, and then I'm not going to finish. So this is the template. Essentially, what I'll need to do is to provide a stack name. Basically, it's going to be a name of my VPN appliance in AWS. Then I will need to specify the instance type, the key pair if I have it. Hopefully I do. If I need to create the elastic IP, which is a nice thing if you are going to use this as a kind of the permanent solution, so the IP address would be all the same. And so whenever you will configure the site-to-site or point-to-site configuration files, they will have this information. So it's not like a public IP is changed all the time if you restart the hub. Then I will need to enable the site-to-site and point-to-site protocols. And then I would need to choose the security, the configuration for self-service certificate that's going to be created within the instance itself. And then once I click next, it will just ask me, okay, so do I acknowledge that it might create something in AWS? I do acknowledge that. So I'm not going to do that because I just did it a couple of hours ago. And then I can come to my EC2 instances view. So you can see I have VPN 2.1 running here. And we're going to access it, but then for the first time access, we'll need the instance ID, which is right here. Okay, so I'll need just to prove that I'm the owner of that. Obviously, since it's the first time I'm trying to access it, it asks me to provide a password because it doesn't have any default password whatsoever once it's deployed from the cloud. Okay, all right, so the password is applied. Now I need to kind of come back and to provide it again. All right, so this is the VPN. This is the public hub that I'm going to use as a central piece of my entire configuration. You can see nothing is here except for all the services, kind of internal services are running. And then it offers me to add a new client. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. Okay, two options how I can add the clients. I can add an entire site or I can add the standalone computer. But then the first thing I'll do is the entire site. So I'm going to bring them something like that, and then to provide them the internal network scheme here. It's going to be this one. All right. Okay, you could have seen, I'm just going to save it right here. But then I'm going to actually to show you that I've deployed already the site gateway. But anyways, so let's go to my, actually, I think I wanted to show you something. So if you need to deploy the site gateway, you can go to veeam.com and you can go to downloads and VeeamPN, and then you can download it. It's the OVA file, which is a template that you could definitely import to your vCenter environment, and you can have the virtual machine up and running there. If you are not planning to do that, or let's say you're using Nutanix or Hyper-V or something else, or physical server, could it be this way? So you can go to user guide and you can just, essentially you can provision any Ubuntu VM, or not even VM, but then the server, and then download repository key there, and then to add the Veeam repository into the known list of repositories. And so after that, you can install the WireGuard and Veeam components after that. This is something that I did because we at our lab right there, we're running Hyper-V. So I'm going to connect to the Hyper-V host and show you that virtual machine that I'm planning to use as a site gateway. Hopefully the Hyper-V guys will be with me. All right. Okay, it seems like we had the reboot. That's nice. And the Hyper-V server should be up and running in a couple of seconds, hopefully. Okay, you can see the cluster is appearing, and this is one of the virtual machines there. So I just created it from scratch. I installed Ubuntu, and then I installed VeeamPN by utilizing that script that I was showing in the user guide. So here it is. It has the network connectivity. I provided the static IP address there, and so now I can access it. And that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to connect to my VBR environment that Travis was showing you, the same VBR console, the same VBR server. Since it's placed there, I'm going to show you. So this is my site gateway. Okay, I'm going to connect to it. Okay, you can see it's asking me, oh, what you're going to do. Okay, this is the site gateway. So I'm going to select the site gateway. What do you need to do? You need a configuration file. You need to have it somewhere there so you can import it, and so the site gateway could use it. Okay, for that, I'm coming back to my main VeeamPN hub, which is right there. And I'm just going to download this file because you can see AP Labs is disconnected for now. Okay, let's go to clients and let's actually download this file. Okay, it's downloaded there. So I can just click on browse here and I can import it. And I can click on finish. Just hopefully a couple of seconds and we should be up and running. We should be connected to the cloud. All right, so I'm connected to the server. If I go to the main Veeam hub, I can click on overview and I can see my AP Labs connected with this IP address that I can already use. That's really cool. So for now, I have a connectivity between, if we're coming back to this particular picture, we have a connectivity between these sites, the AWS site, and a higher office, which is here via the site gateway. Okay, so what we can do next is we can go and let's say connect to one of the roaming laptops, which is right here. And you can see here that I have the, well, on this particular laptop, I have the very random public IP address. Okay, that's not an issue at all. But then the issue is and the requests are timed out to my Veeam backup application server because I'm using Veeam agent for Windows. And I was trying to protect some data that I have here in the downloads folder. And obviously it cannot access it because, well, because I'm, traveling somewhere. And then my actual Veeam backup application IP address within the internal network. So you can see once I'm inside of my company premises, it's fine because it can access it. But then once I'm out, obviously it's not. So the thing that I'm planning to do, okay, let's actually continue that. I'm planning to go to the same Veeam hub right there. And I'm planning to configure the configuration file so I could use it for the connectivity to my Veeam backup replication infrastructure. So for the clients, I go to clients, I click add, and this time I need standalone computer. Okay, for standalone computer, I just need to have the friendly name and use it as a default gateway. There we go. I have it downloaded right away. Okay, so what's going to happen next is you actually need to install some OpenVPN client because this is what we use for the point-to-site connection. Thankfully, I have it installed here. You can see the nice icon in the tray. So I can, okay, I do not have that, but I can import the connection settings from the local file because I already have it. Okay, here's the Adam. Adam imported, Adam saved, that's perfect. And here it is, I'm going to connect to it. Ooh. Okay, now we have the general failure. Then yeah, let's start again. So yeah, we've got the connectivity to Veeam backup and replication infrastructure. So if we're coming back here, then it means that I have connected this environment with this environment via the VPN being in AWS. And then it would actually help me because now, okay, hopefully I can access my backup and replication. And meanwhile, I'm just going to to do something interesting in here, so we have some more traffic to work with. Let me copy this particular agent a couple of times. So we'll have, since I'm trying to protect my downloads folder, I'm just trying to make it a little bit bigger. Okay, let me actually copy paste once again. Yeah, so it would be a couple of more files here. And then if we go to and click files, because this is something that I'm protecting, I wanted to show you that I'm protecting just the downloads folder. Okay, here it is. Okay, and the destination is my Veeam backup replication repository, backup server, backup repository that I'm using on the backup server. The backup cache that Travis mentioned before, it's not available because I'm using the file level mode for the backups. And then I'm just going click through it and I'm going to run the job. So to bring the data from this particular roaming laptop to the premises, to the company premises. Okay, here it is.
One thing I just want to add in real
Go
quick
ahead.
is if you notice how this he hasn't created a recovery media yet, and it lets you know that to remind you, hey, if you skip through it on the first step, make sure to go back and create that so when the time comes, just in case if you do need to do a restore, you have that done. So we do put that extra little message in there to remind you along the way. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a good point, Travis. Yeah, because it would be actually helpful for the any bare metal recoveries because this is this is the laptop day. Sometimes the things can go wrong, right? And yeah, I wanted to bring you this particular graphic here because we're doing some backup pushing from somewhere to the company premises. And I'm connected to the main Veeam hub here. And so you can see that the traffic started to go through it. You can see some spikes here. And actually, yeah, you can even click on performance and you can go through different metrics that are available over there. And hopefully it's going to show something very soon. Yeah, so the hub is processing the data. It's actually pushing it from one side to another. So that's a good thing. If I come back here, all right, so the backup is coming, and you can see it's not particularly fast, but then, well, try to think about this configuration, how the data would actually flow from one random site to AWS and then to the company premises. But then all the same time, everything's secured and everything is just kind of centralized, which is really great. Okay, yeah, it's finalizing, it's done, and then I can go back to my Veeam backup application environment. So it's right there. You can see that in the backups, I have the job that is named Adam downloads. And you can see I have 5 recovery points already created. So this is my central Veeam backup application server. I can right click on it. I can recover the files the way I need. If I had it, if I had the whole VM or a couple of volumes, I would go for the volume recovery, or I could even push the sort of the backup of the physical laptop somewhere to the cloud, or I could recover it as a virtual machine if I need it. It just I'm not going to do that because I use the file level mode for the backup processing. But then it's essentially, this is really nice to have this solution to bring all the sites together. All right, so Travis, I think we're coming back to the end section. Yeah, do we have any questions? Have you seen?
I just had one. Somebody brought up a great point. I was not aware of this. Is he noticed that we were using the remote desktop connection manager, and I guess there was a recent security vulnerability found and is now obsolete by Microsoft because it's not going to be patched again. A link to go good advisory article. That's all we've had so far, but I just wanted to share something I'm going to read later on today and definitely check into. I use it mostly just for the lab here, and I know you do as well, but others out there might not know that. So something in these times is extra point of security. Oh,
Yeah,
here we go.
that's a good point. It's just it's really hard to forget about the thing that you like, right? And on the other hand, yeah, I'm just using it inside of my lab, so I'm not trying to to go out there and to use it for anything like production.
Yeah, so there is a question that just came through. Can a script be created to connect the VPN, kick off the backup, disconnect the VPN? Because he was saying, I do not imagine end users will be technical enough to go through all these steps on a regular backup. So we were showing both sides of that for the configuration, the actual hub and the other configuration. The nice simplified thing, we even kind of did a test for this prior, me and Andrew, was he just sent me the configuration file for the VPN. All I had to do is download the OpenVPN app and import that configuration file, and then all I had to do was connect it just like you're connecting to like a Wi-Fi. It's open it up and connect, and it was very simple for an end user. So we went into kind of both sides of this, where the network hub is a little bit more advanced and will want to be an admin or something else configuring it, but we can even help you along the way, and we have some different documentation with our user's guide. But for the end user, once you have it configured, it's fairly simple. It's just going through and downloading. My hardest thing was finding the download for the file, but it's in actually our user's guide and other documentation. It tells you where to go download OpenVPN from for this. So
yeah, and to add here 2 cents, probably. I mean, if you're running Active Directory, if you're having the group policy objects, it should be really easy for you to to implement this. If you think about it on the high level scheme, you'll need to have the connections for all the computers that you need to protect, and then you need to probably to push the policy with a certain schedule. So it would be synchronized to run the VPN connection and then to push the backups at the same time. So while it's not going to be entirely done inside of Veeam, like using VPN and Veeam agent, you will also need to work with Active Directory and group policy objects. Yeah. All right. So I think we can kind of go to the resources that are here at your disposal. If you, again, if you wanted to know more about things that we do inside of Veeam, if you know to hear more from us, if you want to read more materials or watch webinars, here is the first link that's on the right part of the screen. It's Veeam Resource Library. Just feel free to go there. And then it's really the kind of the library that we store all the resources. So you can, I don't know, you can just watch it for days and days, because it's a huge collection of the knowledge that we are trying to store. And then we have top three tools. We're going to distribute that a slide deck, so it will be easy for you to just click right there and kind of navigate yourself to appropriate parts of the Veeam portals. And then I mentioned, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, you can finish off.
All right. And I already mentioned the Veeam community forums, which is a great kind of community thing to share the information that you want to know about the products, or if you have any feature requests, or if you're not happy with something that our products do, just go there and feel free to push that information out, because the product management team is usually watching and reading all of those and interacting with people. So it's a really great kind of resource to use for your daily operations with Veeam. And probably the last but not the least, it's my.veeam.com. It's the portal where you can pretty much do anything regarding the license. You can download the products. You can manage the cases with support. And both of us, me and Travis, we used to work at support, so we know that pretty much kind of great page for people to actually go there and to access support guys. Travis, do you have any other tips that you might have?
I had a couple other ones. When you download the deck, you should see a couple other links that we're going to add in here. Back to what I discussed a little bit earlier about the backup as a service, or get in touch with a service provider. We'll provide you a link with that if you want to learn more information about a solutions page we have there. And then also we have another remote workers dedicated kind of solutions page that goes over the VPN a little bit with this, and information about Veeam agents. We have a solution brief, so a little bit more information to follow up and kind of tie this all together as well. And then if you would like to set up a demo with personalized demo with one of our SEs, or other, just talk to sales to get more information about it, we're available, and that will get you to the right people. So
Travis, we have a question from Stephanie, and the question is around service providers that might be helpful for people, how to find them. And I mean, do we have any service providers that offer Veeam? What do you think?
So we also have which I'll provide the link as well, we have a service provider portal that has a search function that goes through it. And then we also have what we call a VAS program, Veeam Accredited Service Providers, which they've gone through and shown that they've connected and done training with Veeam, and they're a certified Veeam partner that then can do even professional services or just manage your backups or anything as well. So I'll make sure to include that in the final slide deck that goes out to everybody, that they'll have available to reach out and look into more. So.
Well, that's perfect. I don't think we have any more questions. So probably it's time to say goodbye. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for watching it. We're going to distribute that information, the recording of the webinar and the slides later. And again, have a good day. Thank you.